Good morning, YouTube. How is everybody doing today? I hope you're doing good. This is Leo, and welcome to our channel. We have a very interesting story for you guys today, that's for sure. Today, I'm on 22 Mine Road in southern West Virginia, just outside, not too far from Logan County line. I am at what can only be considered as an illegal dump site. You can see mattresses and trash, jars, there's stuff all over the place. Now, I will try to, the road itself, there's a lot of coal, 22 Mine Road. There's a lot of coal mines here, so there's a lot of coal trucks. And I will try to stay back this way, just a little bit away from the road, to kind of get you guys away from, get the camera away from all the noise, so to speak. We're out here today. We did a story. We're revisiting a story that we did in February of 2023. Now, I won't be going into as much detail on depth on this anniversary edition of the story, but we will connect the older video on the end of this one if any of you guys want to watch it. See what I mean? Lots of coal trucks here. Anyway, this is a very complicated case and highly debated even to this day. Not to mention, it's also one of West Virginia's most famous ghost stories. As far as I'm concerned, this is probably West Virginia's second most famous ghost story. We'll get into a little bit of detail about that too. Look, it's got a very interesting legend, a very interesting story. And a lot of people, there have been countless people, claim to have seen this young lady that was at this site. Mamie Thurman was her name. This right here is the actual spot. Now, Mamie Thurman, hang on, coal truck. Mamie Thurman died June 22nd in 1932, 92 years ago today. We wanted to do a little revisit, you might say, to her story and an acknowledgement of a life cut violently short. As I said, Mamie has also become one of the most famous ghost stories in West Virginia, rivaling Zona Hester Shue, also known as the Greenbrier Ghost, which we also paid a visit to last spring. So anyway, I'm about halfway up 22 Mine Road, like I said, near Holden, West Virginia, about 7 miles outside of Logan, West Virginia. Where I'm standing now is the exact spot where Mamie Thurman was found by a man picking blackberries. He saw a polka-dotted dress and the body of a dark-haired woman, supposedly right here near this fence, right there about where that sofa's at. A woman in a polka-dotted dress. The body of a dark-haired woman soaked by the night's rain, laid right here, halfway down this embankment. This road is used for coal trucks mainly. At the top of the mountain is a small industrial park. It's mostly old strip mine land that's been reclaimed. But anyway, according to medical authorities at the time, Mamie Thurman's death resulted from her throat being slashed from ear to ear, after which she was shot twice in the left side of the head. The body was found in a patch of blackberries by a local, who then called police. Found alongside the body was one shoe, a diamond engagement ring, and a silver wedding band, which ruled out robbery as the motive for her death. The other shoe and her purse which contained $9 in change, cigarettes, a wristwatch, were found about 30 feet away the next day. Police would later uncover bloody rags and a razor in the home of her landlord, Harry Robertson. The same house co-defendant Clarence Stevenson lived in as the Roberts handyman. Now, Clarence was the one convicted of the crime eventually, but we will get to that in a minute. The manner and brutality of her murder was a shock to the citizens of the small town of Logan. The arrest, trial, and eventual conviction of the handyman raised many questions in Logan, as the investigation involved several prominent citizens and local leaders as well. The trial was standing room only, and many spectators brought their own chairs and basket lunches to court. In the first video, Heather and I took you guys to all of these locations, including the courthouse, the funeral home, and the church that her funeral was held in. Today, I'm more or less retelling her story on the anniversary and showing the location where we think she's actually buried. And we will head there in just a few minutes. But like I was saying, when she was found by a gentleman, a local, out here picking blackberries, there's a little trail. It's kind of grown up right now, but there's a trail that goes out this way. The gentleman was out here supposedly picking blackberries and apparently saw her body right here over the hill here. And this is what started everything. This is where the legend began, Virginia. It's a very tragic story, and we're gonna do our best to tell it. We'll see you guys in a minute. I'm gonna head on up to the graveyard from here, and we'll finish our story when we get there. Okay, now I'm coming down the hill. This is where 22 Mine Road ties in with US 119, the highway. This is the spot where Mamie's ghost supposedly pushes your vehicle backwards. Neutral. No. Gotta get it right. Never mind. We'll just use your video, Heather.
All right, it's in neutral. And it's pushing back. Did it stop? We'll do it from the inside video now. What are you doing?
Okay, we're right at the, ready, go.
Okay.
Okay, we're right at the exit. Got it in neutral. Letting off the brake in 3, 2, 1. Rolling backwards.
We rolling.
Uphill. Not
No
touching
feet.
nothing.
Still going. We're still going.
Uphill backwards. Hi there. Wasn't here the last time. Okay, now I'm at the Logan City Cemetery in McConnell, West Virginia, just minutes outside of Logan, where Mamie lived. She was born Mamie Morrison in Kentucky on September 12th in 1900 to George A. Morrison and Ollie, who died when Mamie was 4 months old. Mamie's dad followed her to Logan and eventually died after falling into a creek while he was drunk. He got pneumonia and he died from it. In 1924, Mamie and her husband, Jack Thurman, moved from Bradfordsville, Kentucky, to here in Logan County, West Virginia, where Jack was hired as a patrolman with the local police department. Jack and Mamie rented a small 2-room apartment over a garage located in the backyard of Henry and Louise Robertson's home. Robertson worked for the National Bank of Logan and served as the treasurer for the Logan Public Library. Jack worked nights and was under the impression that his wife did not venture out after dark. This was not necessarily the case. Despite the fact that the 31-year-old Mamie was known as a good wife, a saintly woman, and a faithful church worker at the Nibert Memorial Church, she also frequented local clubs and speakeasies of the time, where she was known for her popularity and a friendly disposition. She was just a nice person. Miss Thurman was also allegedly having an ongoing relationship with Harry Robertson, and according to them, more than a dozen other powerful men in the county, which we have no idea if that's even true, as she was never able to defend the assassination of her character in court. Mamie Thurman's death certificate filed at the courthouse states that she was buried at the Logan Memorial Park here in McConnell, West Virginia. Other records claim to show that her body was transported to Bradfordsville, Kentucky, which we have never seen. But it remains a mystery to this day exactly where Mamie Thurman was buried, and if the man convicted in her death was even her murderer at all. The man convicted was an African American and widely thought to have been a scapegoat for George, who had a lot of evidence against him but walked away. We suspect that Stephen helped drive George, since he didn't drive and maybe was involved, but George was most likely the killer and walked away a free man. Clarence died in prison of cancer and swore to his death that he was innocent. Mamie's brother and family, even today, have no idea where she is for sure. But I will show you a clip of what we believe to be the truth.
It's not like it was a secret, article.
He was in his 70s at the time.
He was in his 70s, and he used to help his dad dig graves here. His dad was a caretaker at this cemetery, and he said he remembers burying Thurman very clearly, and he said where she was buried. First of all, here's a map of the cemetery. You probably can't see it. He said she was buried in B section, but I'll read the article. While many others had reported they remembered Mrs. Thurman being buried at McConnell, 53 years is a long time to remember an exact location. However, Elsie Burgess, now 75 years old, when he was 19, he helped his father, Ed Burgess, dig Mrs. Thurman's grave. There's no question about it, he said. She's buried here. I even helped cover her up. Mr. Burgess said that he and his father averaged digging 2 graves a day at McConnell in the 30s. Sometimes we had to dig up to 3, he said. Burgess said the only grave marker placed at Thurman's grave was a small metal marker put there by the Harris Funeral Home. He said there was never a headstone placed at the site. Burgess explained that the cemetery is divided into 3 sections, A, B, and C. He said Mrs. Thurman was buried in the B section, which is located below the road and in the vicinity of the huge steel monuments. To the best of my knowledge, she was buried about midways up in that section, he said. Logan Memorial Park, which at one point in history was probably the nicest cemetery in the area, is actually a story in itself. Many of Logan's most prominent families have been buried here. At that time, Mr. Burgess's father was caretaker of the property, and reportedly it was owned by the Charleston family. The property later was purchased by another man who supposedly sold many grave plots and earned thousands of dollars by guaranteeing perpetual care. Well, what happened was, when people came to pay for plots and had their loved ones buried, they would start digging and actually hit other graves. He was selling plots that didn't really exist and just pocketing the money. So people started to come here and exhume their loved ones. But there's no record of her being exhumed. And if there wasn't even enough money for her to have a headstone,
who's going to pay for
who's going to pay to have her exhumed? We think is that C.C. Chambers, who is the guy that actually was the lawyer for Clarence Stevenson, who went to jail for Mamie Thurman's murder, he had 2 grave plots here for him and his wife. So rumor had it, you know, papers we had come up with, articles, etc., that he actually felt bad for this girl and for what had happened to her. She's a 31-year-old, beautiful, well-known socialite. And she was murdered tragically. So it pulled at people's heartstrings. So he gave one of his grave plots up, which was here. And him and his wife is actually buried now in Peck's Mill. So she was buried under a different name. It was all kind of covered up. She didn't get a headstone because they couldn't afford it. And her husband probably didn't care at this point because she'd been cheating on him. But what was really confusing us was the steel monuments.
Exactly.
What steel monuments?
There are no steel monuments here. This place doesn't have any steel monuments. Now, we did a little bit of research on this, you know, from the articles, and I want to show you something. Check this out. Now, keep this in mind now. The steel monument, right? Watch this. I'm going to show you something magic. Check this out. Can you read that? What does that say? Okay, now this right here is the steel monument. And it's right here, right where you park at, just right beside of it. Mamie is buried in this location. She never got a headstone, and her small metal aluminum marker was taken as a souvenir by someone many, many years ago. Mamie is said to now roam near 22 Mine Road and wait until she gets justice on her killer and dragging her morals and character through the mud. Most ghost stories that you hear, the ghost, you know, the ghost, the spirit, it seeks revenge. Not Mamie. Mamie's legend says that she seeks justice, not revenge. She's been seen countless times by hundreds of people, most that don't even care about or believe in, you know, paranormal. Calls to police of a dark-haired woman walking slowly along on the dark mountain road. Unfortunately, we will never get to hear her side of the story. Sadly, her husband Jack Thurman is said to have eventually died in a mental asylum in Louisville, Kentucky. Kind of begs the question, doesn't it? Did the ghost of Mamie Thurman have anything to do with that? Or was it just a little bit of poetic justice? She was next to a steel monument. S-T-E-E-L, the metal. Not S-T-E-E-L-E, the name. But the entire graveyard, it goes all the way back through that way, back through that way, back up through there. There's a handful of graves like this one that family members, you know, keep clean. But other than that, that's it. It gets no attention whatsoever, and you can see, you know, the kind of shape it's in. But anyway, the old story said that she was buried by the road next to a steel monument. So for all those years, people were coming up here looking for Mamie's grave next to a steel monument. There is no steel monument here. Of course, you know, the moment of excitement, you know, of finding her lost grave didn't last long, simply because of the story, what happened to her, how she came to be here. You know, it kind of switches right back to, I guess, sadness, you know, that sort of thing, you know, for someone who most certainly didn't deserve to die, and was probably, in all honesty, was probably raked across the coals after her death to help a murderer get away. Wild, isn't it? Wild story. But if we're right, if we are right, now we can't verify this. The only way you could verify this would be to exhume the body, you know, bring over GPR, ground penetrating radar, find the body, find the grave, exhume the grave, and test the body. That's the only way you're going to know for sure. That's out of the question, obviously. If Heather and I are right, the lost grave of Mamie Thurman, the ghost of Mamie Thurman, West Virginia's second most famous ghost, is in the center of your screen right now. Imagine that. But we just wanted to revisit on this anniversary of her death and bring her story back, and, you know, a little bit of the reality of the situation as opposed to the legend of Mamie Thurman. I mean, that's kind of what we do. It's right in the name, Hillbilly Files, Legends, and Locations. It's kind of right in the name. That's what we do. But sometimes telling the legend isn't enough. Sometimes telling the legend's just the beginning. You have to then separate truth from the legend and try to find that one little speck of truth that leads you to something else, that leads you to something bigger. And this was one of those cases for sure. But you can see there's a little mausoleum right there, grave right here. The whole place, this is a big graveyard. But the entire place is completely grown over. And this time of year is pretty much inaccessible. I mean, you can see there's a military grave right here. And there, they are all through here. But right there is the one that brought us over here. The one that originally got us interested in this graveyard, in this old cemetery here, in this place, in this history. And there she is. I would almost bet that they came in with the coffin right through this way. But you can see it's really bad now. It's completely overgrown. People dumping old vehicles, burning garbage, and just all sorts of stuff here. Last time I was up here, I found a rattlesnake over there. Raspberries now, which probably draws the snakes. Well, the berries draw the birds, and the birds draw the snakes. That's how she got found, isn't it? That's exactly how her body was found, right there. Somebody picking berries and found her body. Exactly the way I just did. Picking a berry. I would say a lot of them. I think a lot of old cemeteries are really pretty. You know, the reverence, the love that went into the markers. And I mean, you take someone in your family's gone and you put this marker up there. This marker really, truly means something to you, right? You know, your mother, your dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, whatever. That grave meant something to you. And that's why you put the stone there. And so when we go out and look at these old graveyards and kind of wander around and bring this stuff to you guys, there's a lot of importance behind the scenes. If you get where I'm going here, what we might see as just another stone means a whole lot to someone, to this person's family. That stone means something. And all of these stones are like that. Every stone here means something, or meant something, at least, to someone at one time. But now, they're all gone. The people who put the stones here are gone. Most of the family's gone. And it's like this. But look at this, look here. A vault right there. And watch for snakes. A vault right there. Open. You can see flowers in there, you can see bricks. There's no coffin, obviously. The coffin is underground. The vault is just over top of it. But they're all over the place here, exactly like that. Grave, there's a vault right there. And they're all like that. Pretty much, with a few exceptions. You know, family members. They're all like that. This is one of the better ones here. But we did this one. We explored this a little bit back in the winter a couple years ago. Did a little bit of exploring here, looking around, trying to catalog and see who's here. And you know, we try to update Find a Grave and things like that, so that someday, you know, if Dixie Newsom's family comes looking for her, we try to leave a big paper trail. We try to leave a pretty wide trail, so that someday if Dixie Newsom's descendants come looking for her. Good Lord, you scared me, puppy dog. Hello, you scared the crap out of me. You scared the crap out of me, little doggy. Hello. Good Lord, you scared me. Oh, what are you doing up here, little girl? What are you doing up here, honey? There are snakes up here. There are snakes up here, little dog. You are just so friendly. Look at you. Look at you. Yeah, you are a friendly little girl. Yeah, hello. Hello. Oh, we do kisses, huh? Yeah, we do kisses. You scared me half to death. I just knew it was a bear or something running up on me. Thanks for the comic relief, though. I appreciate that. Good timing, little girl. Very good timing. Lots of raspberries up here in there. Kind of ironic, our story started off with a man picking berries. And there they are. They're all over the place. Kind of ironic, isn't it? Picking berries in a different place. Here we are. Berries everywhere. And cute little dogs too. Or one of them too. But I just think that that was cool, I guess is the right word. You know, I mean, we obviously had nothing to do with any of it, you know, other than, you know, finding the old grave 100 years after the fact. You know, it's not like we could have saved her life or anything. We weren't even born at the time. But there is one thing we can do, you know, for Mamie. We can come out here and we can do the research and we can tell the story and we can keep her story alive. Just maybe we can bring her a tiny shred of that justice that she's been seeking. Anyway, guys, thank you all for coming along. Very much appreciate you watching our videos and all your support. We very much appreciate you. We couldn't do it without you guys, so thank you very much. And I guess that's about it, really, isn't it? That's about all you can do, is tell the story. You know, it's like you feel like you're letting her down somehow. You know, there's something more you could do to bring this young lady justice. But unfortunately there isn't. You know, all we can do is attempt to tell her story to the best of our ability, and I guess just let the chips fall where they fall from there. That's about the best we can do. Rest in peace, Mamie. You're not lost anymore. And welcome to today's edition of the Hillbilly Files. Today we are tackling one of the most famous legends in West Virginia history, Mamie Thurman herself. Now we are at the actual site where her body was found. There's a little yellow gate right behind us, you can see it. And her body was literally, it was right over this
It was
hill.
actually right here where this couch is, around this area, that a deaf mute was picking berries, and he saw what was a blue polka dot dress. He came up to see what it was, and Thurman's head was actually down that hill, and she was wet. It had been raining, and he alerted the authorities. But Thurman's death has become one of the biggest legends, mysteries, and basis for ghost stories in West Virginia. It's got a lot of layers. We won't be able to cover it all, but we're going to cover some locations, and we're going to actually try to figure out, we think we may know. We have done some serious research into this. You know how things go over time. Other little pieces may come along, and there's been several major articles about her in the 80s and stuff like that, so we have all of that to go on. Plus we have, you know, actual testimony and all this sort of stuff. And we have some information that I think you guys might find really interesting. One of the biggest mysteries of Mamie Thurman is where she's buried. Why doesn't she have a marker? And where is her body? So we may actually come very close to figuring that out today. But anyways, we're going to go to the locations. There's never been a video like this before. We're going to go to the locations, the crime locations where her body was, you know, funeral home, etc., where she lived. And at the end, we're going to end up at the cemetery and where we think she may be. And you can decide for yourself. At the top of Trace Mountain, 22 Mine Road, is coal mines. So lots of coal trucks. But I just wanted to show you. And look at the drop-offs here. Big valleys. All right, let's head on to Logan, our first stop.
This right here is the entrance to 22 Mine Road. I can't stay here but just a few seconds. That's why. This is one of the legends inspired right here. It says that if you park here, that Mamie Thurman will push your car backwards, back up the hill. And we'll have that video in here. We'll include that video with you. Let me get out of here before we get ran over.
So in 1932, after Thurman was found, she was brought to what was then the Harris Funeral Home. It is now the Honaker Funeral Home, but this is the original building.
Look at that stone, 100 years.
Now for the gruesome details, of course, that we'll have to get into, Mamie Thurman's neck was slit and she was shot 2 times in the left side of the, right above the ear. So this funeral home has seen many, many, many people come through it. It actually has quite an interesting, rich history. Of course, like I said, it was the Harris Funeral Home.
Pretty building in like the columns.
So this is where Thurman's body was until she was transferred to the Ninthbert Church, where she actually was a member and did work there. She was really known as a good wife and a charitable person, but at night things changed a little bit. So back in the day, This town was booming. Logan was booming, just like some of the bigger cities, New York, LA, things like that. It was rich in timber, coal. It had a lot of money, a lot of partying. Thurman was caught up in it. So her and her husband had moved from Bradfordsville, I think, Kentucky, and he got a job as a policeman, and he had the graveyard shift, which was 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. He had said later in court that he just assumed that while he was at work that Mamie was at home being a good girl. I guess that we didn't have cell phones and text messaging then to check on one's spouse or GPS location. Might have came in handy because he'd have seen that Thurman was not at home reading the Bible. I just think these buildings are really neat. Build style. So this is where the original courthouse stood, where Mamie Thurman's trial took place. It was a real clown show. Journalists from all over the place. There's tons of people outside waiting to get any kind of information. As we know, newspapers back then was big money, and the bigger the story, the more money and more papers. Of course, the courthouse has changed considerably.
Yeah, this one's 1964, this one was built.
So I was looking for the Aracoma drugstore. It's still here. Before Mamie Thurman disappeared, she was seen buying a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes at that drugstore, and then she made a quick trip to a boarding house to drop off some sheets for some reason, and then she was never seen alive again. Pretty old churches. That's not it, is it?
Beautiful old church, yeah.
Yeah. I thought this was it at first. So Logan back in the day used to actually be a little pretty quaint town, but it's kind of a, well, not that anymore. But right here, it's kind of loud, so we're gonna make this quick. Where this drive-through is where Mamie and her husband Jack Thurman stayed above a garage in an apartment that they rented from Harry Robinson, who was later one of the people indicted for her murder. Right here in the drive-through is where her house was, and Harry and his wife's house were up front here, around where the Logan Bank is. So we'll head back to our car. We have about 18 miles to go get it again now. While we're talking, we'll go ahead and point out a couple things. So Mamie Thurman liked a lot of attention. Her mother died when she was 3, and her father was a alcoholic that moved here as well. So in court it came out that Mamie Thurman had been having a 2-year affair with her landlord, Harry Robinson. And his Clarence Stevenson, who what he was exactly was never truly established. He was a good friend of Harry's that was also a handyman, servant, etc. So he also claimed to have been having an affair with Thurman along with 12 to 16 other men, but she's not here to defend herself on any of that. So this is just what was said in court. This is a prehistoric shell of a payphone. Y'all remember those? You put money in them and dial a number, and hey, look, a pacifier. So we found her church. Just walking along here. The McCoy station, huh? What is that? Devil axe? It's like an axe bar, axe throwing bar.
Could be.
It's right there.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I recognize it. So after Mamie Thurman was ready for her funeral, she was moved over to the Nybert Methodist Church that we're coming to right now, where her service took place, before she was moved to her mystery location that her death certificate says she was buried that Friday, June 24th. Her funeral and services cost around $700, which was quite a bit back then. I'm sure Jack Thurman was less than pleased to learn that his wife had been having several affairs. Or maybe he knew about it, and maybe he was one of the ones involved in killing her, question mark. So this is Robinson right here. I wonder if that has anything to do with Harry Robinson. It's a pretty church.
It is. Like old European style.
So when Thurman passed away, she didn't have anywhere to be buried, and this is where a lot of confusion and fuel to the fire comes for conspiracy theorists. Why did her body disappear? Why doesn't she have a marker? Where did she go from this location? But after a lot of digging and research, we think we've come pretty close to where she is. But we'll get there soon enough, right?
Very soon.
So this is Cole Street. What's interesting, a side note, Thurman's father, that I'd mentioned, was a chronic alcoholic. He actually got drunk one night and passed out in a stream where he got pneumonia. Well, he passed away as well, and he also doesn't have a grave marker, and no one knows where he is buried. You know, you have to wonder too if her not having a marker is intentional, because that would have been left up to her husband at the end of the day, if he was angry or if he was involved in the murder, you know.
A lot of speculation.
Yeah, lots of speculation. But she definitely was pretty wild, and she had built something that was just going to tumble in a matter of time, and it did. So in court it was said that she had had an affair with Harry, her landlord, for 2 years, and his wife found out about it, and she begged Harry to not see Mamie anymore. Mamie, however you want to say it. And they kept seeing each other, so they were playing with fire. And you can't tell me that Mamie's husband didn't know about this. There's no way.
It's a small town.
It's a small town, and they were going out a lot at night to this social club that a lot of the big wigs and you know, politically powerful people were going, and they were rubbing elbows with these people. So who knows how deep this really goes, you know? Who knows who all she was having an affair with and who actually killed her. But long story short, Harry Robinson did not drive, so Clarence Stevenson did all of his driving, who was the man who ended up being convicted for this crime. And they did find, unless it was set up, they did find blood on the floorboards of the car, and they found a knife and some bloody clothes in Clarence Stevens' basement, where he lived in the same area that Mamie and Harry lived. So they were both indicted on murder. But in the end, Harry Robinson got off and Clarence Stevenson went to jail. He never stopped confessing that he was innocent. He died several years later from stomach cancer, and he went to his grave saying he was innocent. Now, when So I just thought it was kind of interesting. When they found Mamie Thurman's body, she had a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes on her. I didn't even know they sold these still. But when she got them, they're probably like 25 cents. $4.53 when you buy two. Wow. So this cemetery is at the end of Weeping Willow Drive in McConnell, West Virginia. It's about a 10-minute drive from Logan. There it is right there. Yep. And this is another abandoned cemetery, so, you know, we can't control the universe. It just is what it is.
Already see the spot we're looking for. I see it.
So we're at the old Logan Memorial Park Cemetery in McConnell, West Virginia. If you do happen to come out to see this old cemetery, well, it's not that old. It's actually built in the 1920s. Don't confuse it with the old city cemetery in Logan, which is where we did the Murdered by Your Slaves video, and Lawson. That is a different cemetery. This is another abandoned cemetery And by
away.
abandoned, we mean no one takes responsibility for it, and it doesn't technically belong to anyone. It does not belong to the city. It doesn't belong to anyone. It just kind of exists and is, you know,
Outside
disintegrating.
Yeah.
So what leads us here is an article that we read, which is really interesting, actually. I'll just say briefly, and then I'll turn this over to Leo. And so a lot of people have looked into this. There's been numerous YouTube videos made on this, podcasts, I think a few books.
TV stations.
They talked about making a movie. I'm not sure if they have or not, or where that stands. There's also a play that they were going to do around here. I'm not sure if they went through with that either. But to me, it just doesn't seem that difficult, because the guy that buried Mamie
Did an
interview about 50 years after. It's not like it was a secret, article.
He was in his 70s at the time.
He was in his 70s, and he used to help his dad dig graves here. His dad was a caretaker at this cemetery, and he said he remembers burying Mamie Thurman very clearly, and he said where she was buried. First of all, here's a map of the cemetery. You probably can't see it. He said she was buried in B section, but I'll read the article. While many others had reported they remembered Mrs. Thurman being buried at McConnell, 53 years is a long time to remember an exact location. However, Elsie Burgess, now 75 years old, when he was 19, he helped his father, Ed Burgess, dig Mrs. Thurman's grave. There's no question about it, he said. She's buried here. I even helped cover her up. Mr. Burgess said that he and his father averaged digging 2 graves a day at McConnell in the 30s. Sometimes we had to dig up to 3, he said. Burgess said the only grave marker placed at Mamie Thurman's grave was a small metal marker put there by the Harris Funeral Home. He said there was never a headstone placed at the site. Burgess explained that the cemetery is divided into 3 sections, A, B, and C. He said Mrs. Thurman was buried in the B section, which is located below the road and in the vicinity of the huge steel monuments. To the best of my knowledge, she was buried about midways up in that section, he said. Logan Memorial Park, which at one point in history was probably the nicest cemetery in the area, is actually a story in itself. Many of Logan's most prominent families have been buried here. At that time, Mr. Burgess's father was caretaker of the property, and reportedly it was owned by the Charleston family. The property later was purchased by another man who supposedly sold many grave plots and earned thousands of dollars by guaranteeing perpetual care. Well, what happened was, when people came to paid for plots and had their loved ones buried, they would start digging and actually hit other graves. He was selling plots that didn't really exist and just pocketing the money. So people started to come here and exhume their loved ones. But there's no record of Mamie Thurman being exhumed. And if there wasn't even enough money for her to have a headstone,
who's going to pay for
who's going to pay to have her exhumed? She didn't even actually... Why there's no plot in her name was because she didn't have a plot. So from research, from what we think is that C.C. Chambers, who is the guy that actually was the lawyer for Clarence Stevenson, who went to jail for Mamie Thurman's murder, he had 2 grave plots here for him and his wife. So rumor had it, papers we had come up with, articles, etc., that he actually felt bad for this girl and for what had happened to her. She's a 31-year-old, beautiful, well-known socialite. And she was murdered tragically. So it pulled at people's heartstrings. So he gave one of his grave plots up, which was here. And him and his wife is actually buried now in Peck's Mill. So she was buried under a different name. It was all kind of covered up. She didn't get a headstone because they couldn't afford it. And her husband probably didn't care at this point because she'd been cheating on him. But what was really confusing us was the steel monuments.
Exactly.
What steel monuments?
There are no steel monuments here. This place doesn't have any steel monuments. Now, we did a little bit of research on this, you know, from the articles, and I want to show you something. Check this out. Now, keep this in mind now. The steel monument, right? Watch this. I'm going to show you something magic. You'll like this. Now, Heather, car's parked right there. She's right there. And we did this here for a reason. Check this out. Can you read that? What does that say? Guys, I'm pretty sure we found her. Okay, now, if the article is correct, let me get around here. A lot of stuff, a lot of overgrown brush. You can hear it crunching and cracking under my legs, under my feet. But look here, in the vicinity of the steel monument, just below the road. Boom. Guess what? If the articles are correct, now this is after a whole lot of research. Heather has done a lot of research on this. She knows this story really, really well. She knew this story before we even moved here. She's been into this stuff for a lot longer than most people think. But she got into this story, and like I said, she'd already known a little bit about this. But she gets into this, and she gets to digging on this stuff, and I guess you guys have seen in some of the other videos, that's about when her OCD kicks in. She will not let it go. If our research is correct, she is buried in the center of your screen. Now, imagine that. How cool is that? The lost grave of Mamie Thurman. There's a really good chance. I mean, the only way you'd 100% know for sure would be to, you know, GPR, ground penetrating radar, find all the graves, dig them up, and, you know, do tests on the bodies is the only way you're going to know for sure. If all the reports are right, though, guys, you're looking at Mamie Thurman's grave right now. As far as Heather and I are concerned, I mean, the legend will continue. The ghost stories, all that sort of stuff will continue. As far as the missing body is concerned, as far as her, you know, her body itself is concerned, as far as Heather and I are concerned, this mystery is solved. She is right there in the center of your screen, right beside the big steel monument. Ha! Imagine that.
Well, I hope you enjoyed our video on Mamie Thurman.
But I think it's really cool. You know, if we're right, then this mystery is solved. That's cool.
As far as where she's buried, I mean, like usual, we can't exhume her and figure it out, but, you know.
We're pretty convinced, as far as I'm concerned anyway.
Yeah, I'm convinced.
We found Mamie Thurman. She's right there.
She's right there.
As far as I'm concerned, she is right there.
And we're right next to her.
If she was exhumed, there would have been a hole. There would have been some sort of evidence. Someone would have had to pay for this. But if you're not going to pay for a headstone, you're probably not going to pay to have a body exhumed either. So
no, she's here. It was simple. 10 minutes away, funeral home. Put her in the ground here, done, over with. Someone probably took the metal marker home as a souvenir at some point. You know, that was even famous back then. You know, to me, it's not a mystery. I don't know. Even the death certificate says where she's buried. It says here. She's here. Yeah. And she's right there. So, yeah. Hope you all enjoyed. And
go ahead. The chance to come down here and check this place out. It is absolutely amazing. It's beautiful, old markers and mausoleums and stuff like that. Way back in the middle of the woods. It's absolutely beautiful. It's breathtaking. It really is.
Yeah, I wouldn't come in summer. Everything's grown over, but
you want to do it in the winter when vegetation's down.
Yeah. Lots of cool stuff to see here if you like this kind of stuff and you like adventure, you know.
Yeah, let's definitely get out and have some fun.
Stuff ain't easy. It ain't easy to find, isn't easy to walk around, but it's not that hard either, right?
Well, it's like you see a lot of...
And if you don't want to go yourself,
Well, there's always lots of YouTube channels out there that will show you videos, show you pictures of this stuff. We would rather take you there. We would much rather, if we're going to do this stuff, we're going to take you there and show you the spots, show you the places, and then tell you the stories.
Exactly. So obviously the makings for all ghosts are, you know, the woman in white that wanders in the dress because she's not at rest, and they meet certain criteria, usually a violent death or something horrific that happened. And Mamie Thurman certainly meets that, and she has been haunting 22 Mine Road since shortly after her death. And so there is a hill there that supposedly if you put your car there, Mamie will push it back up the hill. And we actually did try that, we'd mentioned earlier, so I'm going to insert that into this video. Whether she's a ghost or not, I mean, I don't know. I hope she's at rest, hope she's at peace, and I hope she's not tied to 22 Mine Road for eternity. But so we'll...
legend, she will push you back up this hill.
All right, it's in neutral. And it's pushing back. Did it stop? We'll do it from the inside video now. What are you doing?
Okay, we're right at the, ready, go.
Okay.
Okay, we're right at the exit. Got it in neutral. Letting off the brake in 3, 2, 1. Rolling backwards.
We rolling.
Uphill. Not
No
touching
feet.
nothing.
Still going. We're still going.
Uphill backwards.